Hi there. So I'm Marika Ocean Kemble, and what I'm going to be doing today is walking you through an activity I do with a lot of my clients and an activity I regularly take myself through to reconnect the mind and the body. And there are lots of different ways that I use this tool. But one thing I'll say is that there are lots of times when, my thoughts, my cognitive processes, my intellect, my sort of, word thought knowing is a really important tool. It's something I rely on heavily, in my life. And it serves me fairly well, but there have been, many times, often really pivotal, important times in my life when I've sensed that tool, that cognitive tool, is falling short. It's not helping me get to the answers. And in fact, there are even times when I feel that all that thinking is getting in the way of the clarity and the knowing that I'm really wanting. So that's sort of what drew me to this tool originally, and it's what brings me back is noticing when, the usual bag of tricks that I have, the usual bag of sort of cognitive thinking tools isn't serving anymore. It's like, this is a time to see what this mind-body connection has to offer me. So that's a beautiful concept, but what's sometimes true is that we aren't all that used to listening to the body. And so we actually need to do some exercises and some sort of reawakening that connection that's always there, but we haven't always been paying attention to it. And so this activity is all about that, sort of reawakening, bringing our awareness back to what kind of signals we get from our body. And then once you've done that, you can use it in situations where you feel a little stuck or you're wanting to gain more clarity and more insight. Okay, so to begin, I invite you to find a comfortable posture. And that could be lying down, if you're able to stay alert and lie down. Could be just sitting comfortably, finding a comfortable seated position. I do find it's helpful if I'm seated to sit in a way that can feel really grounded. So perhaps uncrossing the legs, finding a way for the feet to rest on the floor, something like that. And if you've been seated a lot today, or if you've been lying down and standing sounds really good to you, this also totally works. Standing, just kind of feet shoulder width apart, hip and shoulder width apart, and just relaxed with a light bend in the knees. So take your comfortable posture. And if you feel drawn to, I invite you to close your eyes, or at least soften and downcast your gaze. And the first thing I'm going to invite you to do is to call to mind a situation when you really knew you were not on your right path. Now, this doesn't need to be sort of the worst memory you can think of. In fact, better to think of something that, you have some perspective and some distance with, and you can see now that it wasn't a good situation, but also it doesn't trigger a lot of sort of revisiting of that difficult time that feels overwhelming, right? So choosing something that feels relatively safe to revisit. And I'll just give you a moment to kind of scan through your memories, just looking for that thing that situation, relationship, experience that you had where you really knew this wasn't for you. This wasn't for you. And then as you think about that memory, I want you to call in some details. And we're actually kind of reawakening a memory here. We're calling it up, right? And so think about some of the details of the situation. How old were you? What time of year was it? Were there other people present or not? Sometimes just what were there smells, sights of that time? Even what were you wearing, or what temperature? Just really calling up all the sensory details of that memory. And then also the content of the memory. What happened? How did it feel? How did you know? What gave you this feeling of this isn't right? Could be words, images, whatever comes up. And once you feel that memory is fairly alive in your mind's eye, I want you to start to scan through the body and look for physical sensation. Could be pleasant, could be unpleasant, could be neutral, could be the absence of sensation, but just sort of scan through and see where you notice anything. And maybe a word or two to describe it, how you would describe it. So you might start at the head, the jaw, the mouth, the cheeks, the eyes. Do you notice anything there? How about in the neck, or the throat, the shoulders, the collarbone, the upper chest, the heart, the whole area of the lungs, the middle and upper back, the belly, the gut, the low back, the pelvis, hips, and sexual organs, the upper legs, the knees, the lower legs, feet and toes. And then also checking with the arms, the upper arms, the elbows, the forearms, the wrists, palms, and the fingertips. So where are you noticing sensation right now? And how would you describe that sensation? Does it have a temperature, a color? Is it heavy or light? Is it open or closed? Perhaps there's another specific image that comes to mind. Is it tingling? Does it have a shape or a density, a vibrational quality to it? And whatever comes to mind, whatever words or imagery you end up placing on the sensation that you notice, it's totally fine. Location also. This is sort of a unique fingerprint for you. So anywhere you notice sensation, it's totally okay. And if anytime you kind of lose clarity about that sensation, the first thing I'll say is just how normal that is. We aren't, as a culture, as a modern Western culture, we're not particularly attuned to all the nuances of our body, so we can lose touch with them. And that's really normal. The other thing is that by revisiting the memory a little bit, you may be able to reconnect with some of that sensation. And by just being open and curious, if you're still not really noticing anything, just notice right now your curiosity about it. the intention you have to wonder about physical sensation. And you may want to revisit this activity a couple of times with that openness and that curiosity and see what might come forward. Okay, so take a moment now, maybe pause this recording and just write down what physical sensations you noticed, how you would describe them, and maybe looking at the description, see if you could circle one or two words that sort of sum it up for you. Either they're the most dominant or you most connect with them. And then the final thing I'd invite you to do is if you were to measure these sensations on a scale of -10 being the worst thing you've ever felt, and +10 being the best thing you've ever felt. This collection that you just experienced just now, what score would you give it? So just kind of check that out and write that down. Super. Okay, so you've written down what sensations you felt with this memory of a not so good circumstance, something that you now have clarity is not a fit for you, okay? And you've written down what the sensations are. You've given the collection of sensations a score between -10 and +10. And you've circled the key words in your labeling of this experience, the physical sensations of the experience. So good for you. It's great. And I would call this now the name, like let's say it was like shallow chest or tight hands, whatever kind of collection of words might have come to your mind. Let's use those key words as being sort of the hallmark of when you're stuck in something that's not for you. Could be that you're stuck in a thought or a belief. Could be that you're stuck in a set of circumstances, in a relationship, in a pattern, right? But when something's not serving you, it has this quality to it. I've sort of calibrated the compass to understand this is what something feels like when it's not for me, right? When there's something that's not serving my higher purpose or where I'm supposed to be or how I'm supposed to be in the world, this is what it feels like. Okay, great. So now we're going to switch gears and we're going to calibrate the other side of the compass, right? If that was our south, we're going to calibrate our north, okay? So go ahead and again, adjust your posture for a moment. We're going to go back into this little reflection, guided reflection. And now I want you to think about a time when you totally knew that you were in the right place, right? This is a situation where you just knew you were doing something that you were meant to do. Maybe it was some kind of a calling or just a feeling of comfort you felt in the situation, a sense that you were in the right place at the right time. You were meant to be there, okay? And it could be in somebody's presence, right? With a trusted, important person in your life. It could be from a long, long time ago, a time you were a child. You know, when I first did this activity, actually a thought came to me about a time when I was in high school and I was on a student exchange trip to Costa Rica. It was a particular memory of that Costa Rican vacation that I had in my mind's eye. So it could be, I guess the point is that it could be a long time in the past. It could also be something really recently. How wonderful, right? If that's when the memory comes to you. But a time when you knew you were on the right path. Okay. And then once again, and it helps if you can close your eyes or soften your gaze in some way. Think about the details of the situation. Who was there? What time of year was it? What temperature was it? What season? Was it day or night? What was happening? What were you doing? What were others doing? What was being said? Was there music? Were there smells? Any other details about the situation? If not music, perhaps there were sounds that you recall. It doesn't have to have been with a group either. It can be time that you spent alone. So again, what were you doing? How were you in that moment, in that really moment where you knew everything was all right? And it can really be very subtle, reading a book, being outside in nature at some point, So whatever comes to mind, think about that situation in great detail. And when the memory feels pretty alive for you, I want you to begin to scan again. Scan the body again, looking for sensation, starting at the head, forehead, eyes, jaw, mouth, tongue, teeth, cheeks, neck and throat, shoulders, collarbone, upper chest, the heart, the whole area of the rib cage and the lungs and the upper back, the belly, the gut, and the low back, the hips and the pelvis, all the sexual organs, the upper legs, the knees, the low legs, ankles, feet and toes. And then back to the arms, the upper arms, elbows, hands, forearms, fingertips. Just see where is sensation really alive when you revisit this memory in great detail. And take a moment to write down what you notice. Where do you feel the sensation the most strongly? And what words would you use to describe it? Again, is there a temperature, a color, texture, or shape to the physical sensation in the body? Does it remind you of something? Does it have a quality? Is it moving or stable and steady? Yeah, just whatever you notice is totally fine. And write down those keywords. And then as you look at those keywords, circle the ones that most represent the essence of this experience for you. And again, we're looking for the essence of the physical sensation of the experience, not necessarily the essence of the memory, because the physical sensation will repeat itself in a variety of different positive memories. And you could check that out later and experiment with that. If you think of other positive memories like this one, where felt like you were on your right path, you were doing what you should have been doing at that moment. It was sort of a landing place, if you will, that felt really true and good for you. If you think of other moments like that, see what sensation comes up. Is it similar, right? So you can check that out, but the physical sensation tends to hold up even when the details of the circumstances change. So that's what we're after, is the essence of the physical experience. in the body when you bring up a memory of this kind, right? Okay, great. And then as we did before, I want you to rate the experience you just thought of between -10, which is like so terrible you can't stand it any longer, and +10, which is like peak experience of your life. Feels so good. So just rate those sensations that you just wrote down and circled. Where do they rate for you? And as we did with the sort of negative memory, the unpleasant memory, the off-course memory, I want you to think about, look at the words that you used and identify kind of a name for it. So what does this feel like to you? And you can use a name like, this feels like, open heart or fluttery belly or whatever that physical experience is for you. But you could also name it with sort of, what does it feel like? So clients in the past have said, this feels like winning, or this feels like freedom, or this feels like peace, right? So you can find the word that means the most to you here. Whatever comes to mind usually works well. And then know that now we've identified the feeling of something that really serves you, the feeling that's sort of a healthy, good path for you. And when you come across an issue and you're trying to sort of decide between two things, and maybe there's a lot of mental noise, right? There's a lot of thought garbage, like just a lot of clutter, thought clutter, let's say. And it's hard to decide, what am I really supposed to be listening to here? You can check in with the body compass. What number would I give this between -10 and +10? And where is the sensation? And how does that compare to my off-track sensation and my on-track sensations from this activity? And just be curious about it. See what the body might have to tell you about an area where you feel confused, stuck, or lacking clarity. As always, I'm here for you. If you have any questions, you're welcome to email me at marikaocean.com. That's MARIJKE at MARIJKEOCEAN.com. And I'd love to help you work through anything you're discovering as part of this body compass process. Okay? Take care and be well.